I remember that night with a strange, painful clarity, maybe because I was never meant to show up there at all. Emily had told me she'd catch a ride home with her friends, told me to relax, told me not to fuss. But after 8 years together, I could hear it. The tiny pause in her voice, the soft quiver that didn't belong. I knew her cadence well enough to read between her breaths. So instead of listening to her comfort, I grabbed my keys and drove out into the brittle November cold. The party was at a house on the far edge of town, one of those glossy designer boxes people buy for Instagram photos more than actual living. Music pulsed through the open windows, careless and loud. I parked across the street, leaves swirling in the beams of my headlights. I told myself I'd just wait. Just make sure she left safely. Leave before she ever knew I was there. But then I saw her car in the driveway, with her jacket tossed across the passenger seat. She was nowhere in sight. I stepped out slowly, already picturing her laughing at me later for being paranoid. But before I reached the front door, something in an upstairs window caught my eye. A light flickered behind half-drawn curtains, shadows drifting across the room. The music below rattled like distant thunder, but that flicker held me still. My chest tightened as I climbed the steps. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and sweat. Bodies passed me without so much as a glance, drinks sloshing, conversations blurring into the chaos. I called Emily's name once, but the sound was swallowed whole by the noise. Then I noticed her phone vibrating on the counter. I shouldn't have looked. But the screen lit up and a name glowed bright as a warning, Mark Redart. Her ex. The mistake from college. The man she swore was long gone from her life. I felt something inside me shift, not anger yet, but a cold, miserable clarity. Maybe I hadn't trusted her for a while. Maybe I just never admitted it. I moved upstairs, each step groaning beneath me. My breath got heavier, the music softening into a distant thud. Then I heard it. Her laugh. Warm. Familiar. The sound that used to fill our kitchen when I ruined breakfast. A door at the end of the hallway stood cracked open. I shouldn't have looked inside. But I did. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, heels discarded, hair falling loosely over her shoulders. Mark stood near her, far too close, his fingers brushing hers while he murmured something I couldn't hear. And she smiled, not awkwardly, not out of politeness, but softly. Comfortably. A smile I hadn't seen in months. My body went numb. My thoughts scrambled to form excuses, but my heart had already done the math. I said nothing. I simply turned around and left. Outside, the cold slapped me awake. I walked to my car like I was moving underwater. Sat behind the wheel, hands shaking, watching that window until her silhouette faded behind the curtains. Every old argument replayed. Every apology that didn't fix anything. I realized then that love rarely collapses loudly. It rusts in silence. I drove until the sky turned pale. My phone buzzed once. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Not that night. And not again. But the story didn't end there. A week later, while gathering her things, I found something that changed everything. The house felt hollow, stuffed with memories that no longer belonged to anyone. Her perfume still clung faintly to the cushions. I started with her books, dog-eared novels she never finished. Then I opened the drawer beside the bed and found a small wooden box tucked beneath a stack of scarves. I'd never seen it before. My first instinct was to close it. But I didn't. Inside were old photographs, not of us but of her with someone older, someone I didn't recognize. They weren't romantic exactly, but they weren't innocent either. His arm around her shoulders. Her laughing freely in a way I hadn't seen in years. At the bottom of the box was an envelope with my name written neatly across the front. My stomach clenched as I opened it. Lucas, it began. If you're reading this, you've seen more than I ever meant for you to. I need to tell you something about the person I was before I met you. Her handwriting was calm. Too calm. She wrote about the man in the photos, Daniel, her old boss. She was 22. He was twice her age, influential and skilled in the wrong ways. It wasn't love, she said. It was manipulation dressed as affection. She ended it, but the damage lingered, haunting the years that followed. She said reconnecting with Mark wasn't romance either. It was about feeling valued, not erased. About control. About old wounds she never dealt with. She asked me not to think she was replacing me. And I hated that part of me still cared. Hated that understanding her made it harder to despise her. Near the end, one line lodged itself in my chest. You were my safe place and I ruined it. I sat there for hours, the letter heavy in my hands. Love, I realized, can be both refuge and ruin. The people we trust the most aren't always cruel, they're often just hurting in ways we can't mend. That weekend she returned to collect her things. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. She thanked me for packing everything neatly. I nodded. Before she walked out the door, I stopped her. I read the letter, I said. She froze. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I answered. And I did. Not with forgiveness but with comprehension. Sometimes broken people don't mean to break others, they simply don't know how to stop the cycle. When she left, I realized something I should have seen long before. My anger wasn't about betrayal. It was about building my world around someone still searching for herself. That night, I drove aimlessly, letting the pain bleed out into the dark. Beneath it all was something new, a quiet surrender, a small sense of release. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. When I got home, I fed the letter to the fireplace. Watched the paper twist, wrinkle, burn into ash. It wasn't vengeance. It was the ending we never said out loud. A truth we both carried. Sometimes love doesn't die because someone breaks it. It ends because two people were never whole enough to hold it.